What's up, Aspira? What's up, Aspirantes? Let me ask you a question. What if I were to give you the most important document in the history of this entire hemisphere? You think you could handle that? You think you're ready for that? Yeah, I think you're ready for it. This is the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address. It has a very, very long history. And I think when you learn about it and reflect on it throughout your life, you'll see and you'll agree with me that it's the most important document in the hemisphere.
Before Europeans arrived on what they would name North American soil, 5 nations came together and formed a confederacy. They were guided by the will of the people, and they created a constitution with 117 articles that guaranteed the rights of the people and the responsibilities of their leaders. That constitution, the Great Law of Peace, still guides those people to this day. So who are they? Well, those Europeans we mentioned would call them Iroquois, but that's not really their name. They are the Haudenosaunee, people of the Long House. We don't know exactly when they formed their confederacy, only that it certainly came before the arrival of the Europeans, perhaps by as much as a millennium. We also know the name of one of its founders, Hiawatha.
The Thanksgiving Address is what we have that brought together 5 warring nations long, long time ago. And here is Chief Oren Lyons from one of those nations, the Onondaga, to tell us a little bit about the story.
In the story of the peacemaker, time is something that nobody is sure about. Exactly how long did it take for him to gather 5 warring nations who are not only warring between themselves, they're warring internally and internally into the family. It was a very, very bad time. When I looked at Kosovo recently, I thought the time must have been similar to that, where the hatred was so embedded that there was no logic whatsoever. It had its own energy, didn't need logic anymore. How it started, probably don't even remember. But it was fierce. And I was thinking it must be like that time among our own people. And so when the peacemaker finally gathered all the 5 nations at the shores of Onondaga Lake, which is upstate central New York right now. That's an ancient, ancient place with a great event occurring there on those shores. When he gathered those leaders together and sent them in to find their clans, and he laid out the process. He gave everything to us. Just gave it complete. We didn't evolve it, it was just given. He says, and here's the process, and here's how you will do this. And so he said, I'm going to plant a great tree of peace here. This represent peace, spiritual laws of the universe. And he instructed the leaders never to challenge those laws because you will not prevail. And that's where we are today. We seem to be challenging every single one of those laws, and we will not prevail. That's a prediction.
Our story begins in Onondaga territory, in a time when people who had once been brothers warred with each other. A chief named Tadodaho led the Onondaga into battle after battle. He was ferocious to the point of viciousness, and although he won many battles, his victories never brought peace, and his lust for violence only grew stronger. The lesser chiefs of his tribe lived in fear of him, and Tadodaho treated them like scum whose only purpose was to praise and obey him. But one of them did not. His name was Hiawatha. Hiawatha was grieving. His wife had been taken from him by raiders long ago. 2 of his daughters had died of illness that couldn't be cured, and then his 3rd daughter, whom he cherished and tried to protect, died in a tragic accident. Hiawatha found himself looking back on a lifetime of war with regret. This sorrow he felt must surely be shared by everybody who had lost a child or a loved one. War seemed to him like the worst cause of this grief, since unlike illness or misfortune, war could be avoided. At least he believed it could be. He called a council of all the Onondaga chiefs, including Tadodaho, to propose a peace. According to stories he'd heard, their brother tribe, the Mohawk, had embraced a peaceful way of life and were no longer waging war on anyone. Hiawatha said, if we unite with them, we can protect each other. We'll have no more need of war. Tadodaho hated that idea. War was his identity. It was the foundation of his power. Everyone who looked up to him did so because they feared his strength. He told Hiawatha that if he liked this Mohawk peace so much, maybe he should go live with them. And the remaining chiefs, cowed by Tadodaho, didn't disagree. So Hiawatha left. He traveled to the current home of the Mohawks and sought the man he'd heard stories about, the man who had convinced them to give up their warring ways and embrace peace. His grandmother had given him a different name, but now everybody called him the Peacemaker. Hiawatha waited patiently outside the walls of the Mohawk village where the Peacemaker lived until the Peacemaker came to him. When they met, Hiawatha gave him a string of shining purple and white beads called wampum. The white ones represented peace, he said, and the dark ones represented war. So he had created a string with white beads on either side of the dark beads to show his desire for peace to overcome war. The Peacemaker had never before seen wampum used to convey a message, and he liked this stranger immediately. The Peacemaker welcomed Hiawatha into his longhouse. When he heard what Hiawatha had proposed among the Onondaga, his face lit up. But as they talked, it became clear that he didn't want just the Onondaga and the Mohawk to be allies. He believed all people could live together in peace, as the Creator intended. Of course, he and Hiawatha agreed that the easiest place to start would be with the 5 nations who already shared similar languages: the Onondaga, the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Cayuga, and the Seneca.
This form of government was also called the Great Law of Peace. The Great Law of Peace was the government before the United States of America and Canada and even Mexico. That's why I say it's an extremely important document, because it's a document that everyone from here could understand. And I think you're going to understand it too. The Thanksgiving address is really powerful because it teaches you how to express gratitude. It reminds you that that's your role as a human being, to acknowledge these things and to give thanks for them. The Thanksgiving address is also an orientation because it teaches us what the role is of all the different things around us, like the trees and the sun and the moon and the stars and even the fish. That's why it's so important. It's a document that brought people who traditionally would war against each other together in a very, very profound way. The other reason why it's so important is because the Haudenosaunee are the longest running, continuously operating government on the planet. They still continue. All the other governments have either changed or been overthrown, except for maybe the British government. So that means this is an incredible document for resilience. What do I mean when I say resilience? That means that you can have something really bad happen to you and it doesn't stop you. You just keep on going. I'll give you an example of resilience. Do you want to know what the difference is between a person who is good in math versus a person who is not so good in math? The person who is good in math never gives up. They keep on working the problem because they know there's a solution. Most people give up, and that's why they're not so good at math. So that is what is meant as resilience. They will keep on fighting until they find an answer. And so that's what we want for you, to be resilient. That's why we give you this Thanksgiving address, because it teaches you how to be resilient. One of the ways you can be resilient on your own is just by giving gratitude, thinking of things to be grateful for, and finding ways in which we can help each other. Those are things that will help you to become resilient and other people to become resilient as well, because they will survive off of the goodness and the strength that you give them. And when you think about it, all the things in nature are giving you stuff. The trees and the plants are giving you air. The earth itself is giving you water. The fish and the animals are giving you food, as are the plants, and you're getting medicines from the earth. So the earth gives you everything you need, and the Thanksgiving address reminds you of that. All right, aspirantes, you can either look for me to give the Thanksgiving address, or you can look it up on your own at the Smithsonian Institution. I'll see you next time. Ho!